Hello everyone and welcome back to a new video. And today I'm going to be reacting to what Fears the Fathom Woodbury Getaway hides review. Now I already watched the other one on Iron Barker account. Yeah, right here. And yeah, I'm just excited to get to this, because it's always fun to see what we don't see. And obviously, first link in the description for this video, do check horoscope though. But yeah, let's watch.
What does Fears of Fathom Woodbury Getaway hide from the player behind the scenes? In the 5th episode of Fears of Fathom, our character, Sydney Harper, works at a consulting firm and plans on taking a weekend getaway with some college friends.
I never saw that population fears.
However, little does she know, these plans will end up going horribly wrong as Sydney and her friends make this trip to Woodbury. Things are never as they seem in Fears of Fathom. It's dark and obscure with its visual style. And
yeah,
there's a lot the player.
That's why I like it though. Is that
so
what
that's
the fuck
why
was
we're breaking
that?
the game today. For instance, we'll see what this backpacking stranger is up to as we fear for our life in this house, along with getting into places we're not exactly supposed to be. I sure hope my car doesn't explode when it hits the ground. So I hope you enjoy this alternative look at this dark tale.
Oh, he's
As
so
always,
creepy,
I
that
usually hit you
guy.
guys with a brief recap, so everyone knows the sequence of events that take place throughout the game.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm just gonna skip this or cut it down a bit, because we know what's going
With
on.
that said, we start off in this cubicle playing as Sydney Harper. She needs a coffee to get done with the day, as she states. We can see we're in the city, and it's late, but if we come over to this area, we can make ourselves a coffee to progress. Once she's done with the coffee, naturally, she has to use the restroom now. Heading to the restroom, there, we'll be able to hear footsteps and humming. We can hear an individual enter the bathroom as they continue to hum. Exiting the restroom stall results with a janitor jump scaring us.
It scared, even though there was no sound, it still scared me. What the hell?
States he didn't know we were in here. Curious how he didn't hear my pee meter go down, but okay. He'll express his frustration as someone keeps throwing coffee cups on the floor of the office. Oops.
Also, I think that dialogue was changed, because when I played it, it was right after the game released, and that he never said that in my thing.
He just goes back to cleaning.
I think they added that after.
Booking a cabin. Sydney's phone will start ringing as we make our way back to her cubicle, which ends up being her odd friend Mike. You'll see what I mean as we get further into this video, but he'll let us know that he thought we might be ignoring him, as he awkwardly laughs. Expressing that he's only kidding, the calls to make sure that we book this trip that we plan on taking. We're on a budget, due to her other friend Nora. So, as we browse the potential homes to rent, we'll see that our options are narrowed down to this private cabin in Woodbury. Booking the cabin will follow with the screen fading to black as Sydney begins to tell her story. She explains that she works at a consulting firm, which leaves her little time for herself. Her college friend Mike is the one that suggested this weekend getaway, and the plan was simple: rent a cabin for the weekend and be back on Monday. 2 days pass as we load into an elevator with this very suspicious happy dude. Mike will text as he's pulling into the parking garage to pick us up. After making sure that the overly happy dude leaves, we greet Mike with this awkward hug. He'll say, "That's still how you hug people?" as we're forced to hug him once again. You smell like a potential killer. Anyway, we throw our bag in the bed of the truck and hop in as we're loaded into the
Understand.
next one. Okay, end of review. It's now
like you have like an awkward hug and you're like, that's how you hug people, you fucking bitch.
Go back and take a closer look at everything we just went through. The first thing I wanted to do was get my character down onto those city streets. This results with us falling through the map though, which the game will even recognize, as our character comically says, "I fell off the map." I wonder if this is a comical nod to us falling off our bike in Fears of Fathom 3 as we plummeted from the sky. So the next best thing would be exploring the city with our camera instead. The pedestrians that are walking down here consist of two different models, one being the smiling guy, who we end up seeing in the elevator, along with a model of a woman as well. At some point I broke some of them.
That could maybe be the model of us, but we never see ourselves, so I don't know.
As they began to just slide around.
Yeah, that is not normal.
Or something. We can see the building we're in is in fact just a floating one-story section we traverse through. This makes sense, as we'd obviously never see this exterior of this building during normal gameplay. I couldn't resist and started messing with the scale of some of these folks. Doing this appears to affect the path they are on, as they'll be deterred from the normal path they take. I went a little crazy and made some of them big boys and girls, which, as you can see, resulted in this weird traffic jam of bodies. Watching this semi-truck drive through the city and making its turns is pretty silly to see. But as I dug into the files, I found that the city could have looked a bit different from what it currently is. We can see some much larger buildings when we load them in, and they are massive in comparison. Speaking of, I ended up blowing this coffee up, resulting with this giant cup of coffee that I tried to drag around the office. This did not last long though, as I had trouble moving while holding it. Our co-worker doesn't seem to be bothered by any of the strange events taking place, so we let him carry on with his work.
Okay.
Moving on, I decided to take a page from the janitor's book and go into the men's restroom. This results with us, falling off the map. Anyway, this janitor will spawn right outside the restroom as he creeps right in, only to disappear. We can see during the jump scare that he appears as he jumps out from behind the door. What reasonable person does this? Jeremy needs to work on his social skills, I guess. So I get back at him by throwing my cup at him. He'll tell us we need to stop, and we'll be upset if we continue to do it, but that smile never leaves his face.
Yeah.
Not much else takes place during this entire sequence in the office, but there's a computer game we play called Type Invader Reloaded. We basically are tasked with typing out the words that these aliens are tagged with, which ultimately destroys them. Movement is all automated like a rail shooter, and all we need to do is type words. It's overall fun, and if we go out of bounds while playing, we can see that this area they used for this game is up above the map we are on. This won't be the last we see of these Roswell intruders though, as Woodbury is known for its UFO sightings. It is kind of neat looking at how low resolution the models are though for this game. Going into this next scene, you'll see that this parking garage unsurprisingly consists of this small map. We can see things are already broken though, as this guy starts sliding away. Intrigued, I decide to follow him to see what his journey holds. Looking at his car, we can see it appears it's filled in, which was strange looking.
Is it filled with cement? Like what?
He simply disappeared, but before doing so, he makes this wild fast turn around the bend. Watching from this angle, we can see he makes the turn, hits the wall, and then disappears. Mike will load down this ramp though, as he comes to pick us up wearing his Crystal Lake scented cologne. I'm sorry, but this guy is strange, and I'm already getting killer vibes from him. I tried having our conversation from a distance to avoid the hug, but as you can see, he pulls me in anyway. With that though, I put on my speedster shoes as we get ready to embark on this trip to Woodbury. Progressing normally at this point, it's going to be 4:26 p.m. as we load in while Mike drives. Mike will engage in small talk about college, and overall, you can get the vibe that he's definitely into Sydney much more so than she is with him. It gives you a slight sense that we may not be completely safe with him. Rick Wilson will message us in regards to the house we're renting, requesting a confirmation text to make sure everything is good. During our drive, Sydney will focus on a school bus that's parked beside a house. She sort of makes a big deal over it, as Mike shrugs it off as it could be someone's project or something. Shortly after this, a deer will be in the road as Mike honks at it, making it flee into the woods. This follows with Mike talking about Native American lore, saying the deer crossing our path is a message from the universe. Unsurprisingly, Sydney has no response for this. After confirming with Rick that we're on a
I don't know what he was on.
lets us know the drive should be another hour and a half or so. This follows with the screen fading to black as we enter the next sequence of the game. Coming back to the beginning of this section though, we can zoom out and get a good look at the entirety of this map. I briefly made it so all the objects are loaded in despite the distance, and as you can see, the game began to lag extremely. So let's go ahead and turn that back off. Taking a look at the truck, we can see this snow surface linked to the top of the truck. This actually acts as an anti-snow plane to prevent the snowfall from entering the truck as we drive. So basically, the snow particles think they're hitting the ground and just stop. I decided to freeze time in the game and survey this entire map with the camera to see if there is perhaps something we missed.
I wonder how he does these videos. Is like what program or what does he use? It's gotta be like a Unity thing. I don't know.
Something hidden out here. Every house I entered was unsurprisingly
I want to do something like
mostly
this.
vacant, with some having vegetation within them, trees, grass, etc.
Oh.
Moving on, I
So
made it to the
it's
school
an
bus
entire
and was
tree.
excited to see if there's more to this bus. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, as I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. However, we can find the deer in the road here, frozen in time. He'd just be chilling. So this road does loop around the entire map. And as we drove, I must have done something the game didn't like, because it ended up freezing us in this position as Mike was unable to proceed with driving. Loading back in, we can see the deer wasn't having it with our shenanigans, as it casually slides off screen. I tried derailing Mike's path as he travels, and as you can see, even with lifting the truck high off the ground, it has no
That's
effect,
probably the
as
UFO
it simply
sightings they
just
saw.
resets. I then tried making the truck huge, like the pedestrians from before, but we carry on as normal. Well, normal-ish? However, turn the truck into an RC toy is probably my favorite out of all the things I tried here. It appears to be going much faster than it actually is. It's
Why is it
hilarious
so
to watch
red?
take place as we beam down the road like we're the children from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. When approaching the deer at this size, you see that the deer doesn't even flinch as we drive by it. I'm guessing due to our size, we must have bypassed the trigger for the deer to run off, which results with us continuing to drive, as Mike won't say one word to us. My anxiety started to kick in as I realized we were beginning to sink into the map. We eventually do slightly sink under the road, but I believe in Mike, and don't believe he'll let us die that way. Being small ultimately lets us loop around this entire map. After making ourselves regular size...
Also, I wonder if Rail watches these videos. So I feel like if I created a game, I would want to watch a video like this.
Things sort of go back to normal, as we're able to proceed into the next section.
Oh,
Entering the
snap.
next scene during typical gameplay, Mike will grab our attention as he points out a pizza joint called Moe's Pizza. So it's now time to smash some pizza. Mike will hold the door for us like a gentleman, and as we can see, this place is hopping. I won't go into great detail, but watching the TV shows is a must. They are all strange and will definitely give some laughs. However, there's one commercial that's more interesting than funny. Watch and listen carefully.
Enjoy amazing views and undisturbed relaxation in our refurbished cabins. Now, not only are these cabins cheap, but they are also safe, with each cabin having a designated caretaker to ensure that your stay is top-notch.
Oh,
They
really?
use that picture as well, and I'm about to look at. Also, again, for some reason I didn't look at the ads. I should just look more around in video games.
We'll come back to this. There's also a commercial that shows the Fears to Fathom main menu on the monitor, which was a cool Easter egg. Anyway, everyone in here initially seems nice, outside of this lady wanting us to leave her alone. I mean, it makes sense. They don't know me. You do get an achievement for talking to all
it's
the
kind of
NPCs
weird.
in here, though. At this point, we're going to want to order
Anyway,
some
just
pizza in order
talk to
progress.
everyone.
While waiting for our food to be ready, our other friend, Nora, lets us know that she's going to be running behind, as she's supposed to be meeting up with us in Woodbury. Mike will proceed to be creepy with his remarks, as we're supposed to know what he's talking about. Once we get our food
Yeah,
started,
man,
this
why?
guy will approach us
Why?
and basically ask us for a ride. It gets weird as we let him know there's no room. He doesn't like this answer and begins to be passive-aggressive. He plays it off, stating he's just cold and tired, which follows with his exit from the pizzeria. Once we're done eating, it's time to hit the road. But it looks like we'll be driving this time around. As soon as we enter the truck, the screen will fade to black, ending this scene. Coming back to this area, if we go up, we can take a look at the entire map this section takes place in. You can see the majority of it consists of trees. Going back to Sydney, I immediately test to see where we're able to go. And it appears we're trapped in here by invisible walls. Something else to note, cars will not kill you if you run out in front of them. Once breaking out these barriers, I proceed to do what I've always been doing, as I explore more of these houses that are once again, unsurprisingly vacant. It was worth a look though. I did this with all the surrounding buildings, but didn't find anything. Knowing what lies ahead for our character, I tried flagging down this cop, and they weren't having it. I forgot to mention, this guy folding boxes has an interesting recommendation when it comes to the choice of toppings for our pizza. As he states, get the cheese, just the cheese. Alright. This prompted me to go in the back to see what kind of pizza shop they're running here. And by taking a look, there's just a guy standing here, patiently waiting for boxes. He'll grab the boxes that the cheese guy was folding and bring them back here, where they simply vanish, as he resets. I mean, he seems content with the job. No one cares that I'm back here either. This is when I began messing with all the NPCs in here, as I discovered that this small guy's name in the files is Hobo. Trying to move this guy outside of the building was futile, as this guy just casually walks through the wall and right back into the building. What is this sorcery? Remembering that this lady was snippy with me, I decided to boot her out too. So I slid her outside, across the street, and eventually up on this gas station. There we go. Talking to her guy again shows that she has super hearing, as she's able to confront us from the roof of the gas station. Big words for a, big lady. I continue to terrorize the customers of this restaurant, seeing as not much takes place off screen in this section. However, when looking at this particular guy, I couldn't help but notice he sort of looked like Mike. This is when I saw in the files that his name is Mike, with our Mike being referred to as New Mike. This raises quite a few questions as to who this Mike is that we're traveling with.
Was that the OG Mike, and then they made a new character because they didn't think this one looked good enough or something?
Perhaps this used to be the old model for Mike? All these people must be getting
That's
sick
what
of me,
I'm getting.
though, so I decided to move on.
That's what I'm getting at.
Instance, our hitchhiker friend approaches us in a much scarier demeanor as he's sliding about like a zombie. Following him, we can see he'll proceed down the road, eventually coming to a stop right here, where he'll stay for the remainder of this sequence. With that, we give the pizza joint one last farewell, as the customers probably
Oh,
won't
God.
ever want to see us again. Sorry, not sorry. Loading into the next section, we'll see it's now 5:49 p.m. as we're in control of the truck. Before progressing normally though, let's quickly go over the secret ending that takes place where we're currently at. If we instead decide to turn this truck
Secret
around
ending.
and head back from where we came, Sydney will say, "We aren't going to Woodbury anymore," followed by, "We decide to go back." This in turn simply takes us back to the main
Okay.
menu. I guess that's one way to
Yeah,
handle
probably
it.
for the best,
Pressing on normally,
honestly.
though, this part basically consists of us, the player, driving the truck into Woodbury. No interactions occur unless we drive recklessly, but once arriving at this lovely home, we gather our things and head to the front door. We'll use the code Rick texted us to get the house key, so we can make our way in. Once inside, Mike lets us know that he needs to use the bathroom, and says we should put the groceries away while he's in there. So we do just that, and unload everything from this cooler. Mike will then come out after we complete this task, expressing how the pizza did a number on him. Now Sydney needs to use the restroom though, so we go ahead and do that. At this point, Mike and Sydney decide to do a tour of the house as we make our way upstairs. This first room on the left gives us a good old jump scare with this small, strange man. He excitedly welcomes us to his home sweet home,
He is small.
which is something we'll want to keep in mind for later. Apparently, this is Rick. He'll end up giving us an entire tour of the home, which does prove to be helpful throughout the game. His familiarity with the home comes off as normal as he gives this tour. He'll even notice that we stocked the fridge, which is also something else to note.
Yeah, so that's why I'm guessing he had to at least have been there for a few days, so he really got like familiar with the home. Because if he got there that night, he wouldn't really know anywhere of the home. But I don't know. He must have been there for at least a few days.
Getting to the basement is where it gets more strange though.
Oh my god, I want to see what's in the room.
Asks about this locked room in the basement. Rick expresses that it's nothing to be concerned with, as renters don't need the space and ought to keep upstairs. Then as we're trying to exit the basement, he goes on further to say that someone had died here in the past, and that reports of voices and shuffling around could be heard in the basement. Apparently, this ends up being a joke, but only Rick is laughing. He then claims he needs to head off and go find his cat.
Yeah.
Before leaving, he'll ask Sydney what her name is, stating he must be getting old as the reason for forgetting. A lot of red flags happening right now. Sydney
A
decides to
pretty
take a
name
shower
for
at
a
this point,
pretty
and
girl.
once we're done with that, we'll come back down and
Fucking
find Mike
ready.
is ready to go fishing. So we reluctantly go out to the shed, grab a fishing rod, bait, and then set up next to this ravine where Mike and the player fish for some carp. We need to catch 3 carp to progress from this part, as we're tasked with keeping this fish icon in the orange as we reel it in. Once we're done, we will head back inside. Coming back to the start of the sequence, we can once again zoom out and get a good look at
that's a
this
pretty
final
big map.
that we'll be playing on. There are a lot of town sections and terrain to explore overall, and to save on time, I can just tell you right now that I combed through this entire map to see what we could find, and it's pretty much the same findings as the previous map. Empty homes, etc. There's some pretty
I wish there was more, like, Easter eggs. Because if I was making a horror game, which I've tried to in the past but I wasn't successful in, I would have put a crap load of Easter eggs. But I guess to each their own, or whatever.
billboards too, which were pretty funny to view, but overall, it's a cold, quiet ghost town. Maybe the killer has taken over Woodbury. There was this house across the street though, and inside there's quite a funny wall. It looks like it's made of doors, so the mesh for this wall object has been assigned the overarching material that is used for doors. But because there isn't any proper texture mapping with this object for this material, what we're left with is a funhouse wall full of small doors. Making things interesting though, I managed to get the aliens from the computer to invade the town of Woodbury. Unfortunately, because the alien minigame isn't free roam, there weren't a lot of things I could do with it, but I could do this. Imagine just driving up and seeing this blocking the road. So of course, like any good driver, I smashed it with my ride as I pushed it into the guardrail. I think it'll live, but will we? With the alien's magical powers, our car was then dropped hundreds of meters in the air as we hit the ground for a ride.
Okay.
At this point, I decided to go off-roading with Mike as we drove to our inevitable end, as in the edge of the map. Just like in previous episodes, we're able to yeet ourselves into the great beyond, and I'm surprised Mike doesn't have anything to say about it. Before actually entering the
Yeah,
town,
he's just fine with
I
that.
wanted to let my presence be known, so I started messing with his bobblehead on our dash. After blowing him up in size, we could see his name is Sheriff McBullet, which is great.
That's the little,
so after some adjusting, I managed to get
thing.
the sheriff on top of the truck as we cruised into town, letting everyone know that we're from Texas. This killer doesn't even know what's coming their way. While doing this, I managed to find another ornament that possibly could have been an earlier choice that the developer decided not to go with, hence Sheriff McBullet's existence. I guess there was only room for one sheriff in this town. In the midst of this, I was trying to flip the truck, like we have with other vehicles in past Fears to Fathom episodes. But it proved to be difficult. Once I finally did it, I was sad to see that it wasn't operable while flipped. Technology has regressed. However, we graciously arrive at the house in style, if I must say so for myself. Glorious! If the player looks up at the second floor window, they'll actually be able to see Rick peering through it. As we're entering the house, you can see he's tracking us, as we're always in his sight. Very, unsettling. It's time to break the sequence of events here, though, as we go upstairs first, instead of stocking the fridge. Mike's still in the bathroom at this point, but as you can see, we're able to initiate this interaction with Rick anyways, as he runs at us from the window. Mike's now with us due to this interaction, but he's technically still using the bathroom. As Rick gives us now with us due to this interaction, but he's technically still
What's his head doing?
the bathroom. As Rick gives his tour, we can see that the bathroom is, in fact, still occupied by Mike, but not really. Looking in there shows that he's not there, of course, but in the kitchen, Rick will praise our stocked fridge that's actually empty, which I thought was funny. It got more creepy when they began to freeze in place and start sliding about. At any rate, I figured I should stock the fridge now since it will be full. However, I foregore that once we finish stocking the fridge, that the trigger for Mike to come out of the bathroom takes place. This resulted with me having temporarily paralysis, as Mike unsuspectedly and terrifyingly approached me. This in turn prompts him to go upstairs and unpack. Watching him go up, we'll see the bag disappear as he assumes this position. This sequence could vary, seeing as we're currently getting a tour by Rick. As soon as I continue to follow Rick into the basement, Mike will realize he's not where he's supposed to be.
This really messes with the game, doesn't it?
This entire sequence plays out hilariously though, as they continue to be
just going up to Rick a little early really messes with the game this much.
in these broken positions. Following Rick as he leaves is quite the venture. He'll make his way to the side of the house as he proceeds down this path. It's a rather long path that goes all the way back and behind the house, leading to this little bridge for the ravine. He'll cross this bridge and end up clipping through a couple of objects before ultimately disappearing. Meanwhile, I'm watching Mike as he just stands in front of the couch staring at the TV. Possessed. Is it fair to say Rick and Mike are on the same level of creep? It's once again time to fish though. I forgot to mention before, but you can also catch goldfish as well, even while
I never got any of the other
However,
ones.
there is something I missed from my first playthrough, which is this person walking on the bridge as we're
I also missed
going
it.
in for a closer look. We'll see that it's our good old passive-aggressive hitchhiker. He'll eventually make his way back here, where he'll end up walking in place for quite some time. Coming back here as Sydney, we unfortunately can't interact with him, but I did find out something else about this spot. Apparently, I can fish here, and as you can see, we're catching fish right from the feet of this hiker, making for a strange scenario. So after fishing, we end up coming back inside, where we have this whole cooking sequence as we make a meal together. For any players with a keen eye, you'll notice that the fridge door was open when coming back in, and that one of the milks is missing too. Something to keep in mind for later.
I didn't notice that.
Though, we'll follow with Mike wanting to play a board game while we wait. The Ouija board is the correct choice here when choosing one of the board games, which will lead us to setting up the game in the basement.
I, for some reason, didn't choose Ouija board.
Monopoly, but whatever. So, as you'd assume, we try to speak with the spirits in the basement, which ultimately ends with Mike freaking out and running upstairs, as we could hear shuffling from the locked room. Mike can be found upstairs out of breath, and Sydney lets him know that was a jerk move to leave her down there.
It was.
Down now though, so at this point we get settled, eat, and watch some TV. After this, Mike goes up to check emails on his laptop while we grab the dishes and wash them. That's when Mike will text us, claiming someone is under his bed. Going upstairs to investigate, Mike decides to jump scare us, as he was pranking us. Good one, Mike. Now Mike wants to play hide and seek, so we hide in the basement, where he eventually does find us. Mike will then decide to hide this time, which leads us to finding him in the closet upstairs. Once finding him, we end up thinking he's pulling a fast one again, as he claims he can hear something in the attic. However, after grabbing this step stool and using it to get up into the attic, we'll see that all that's up here is this sweet cat, which must be the one Rick was talking about earlier. We let Mike know it was just a cat, as we continue playing hide and seek. This follows with the player hiding out in the shed in the backyard. As we watch Mike come out looking for us, we'll see a figure walk by within the house during this, which is certainly unsettling.
I also didn't notice that. What the hell? What the hell?
At this point, he goes to hide once again, and he's nowhere to be found while looking for him. Turns out we find someone else instead. It's Rick, and he's fixing the sink with a hammer apparently. A tense conversation will take place between the three of them, weighing the reasoning for his presence in the home. He ends up being offended, like he's not being a creep or anything, and proceeds to leave, with the screen eventually fading to black as the scene ultimately ends. Rewinding time now to cause further chaos, I want to check out this locked room in the basement. Deleting the door, we can come in here and see that there's nothing in here. This is probably because we never actually see the inside of this room, at least during this particular sequence. Even when Mike freaks out during the board game, we can see nothing is actually there. However, if you look closely, we can see this box that's clearly for the kitty, and oh, it's her milk that went missing. Clearly someone's feeding this cat, but I think it's safe to say that most of us are on the same page when it comes to who we think it is. I was getting sick of Mike's crap, so I canceled dinner and booted him right out of the house. Of course, this doesn't work, and he comes right back in to have dinner. And meanwhile, if anyone was wondering, the hitchhiker is still walking in place out here. This is when Mike tries to prank us, as he claims someone's under the bed. As we reach the second floor, he'll despawn. He'll then strangely spawn behind us as we walk in, initiating his jump scare. I played hide and seek again with him, but this time he kept his eyes covered the entire time. Clearly he was cheating in some way, as he was still able to find me each time. Joking aside, remember the figure we saw in the house? Well, if we wait, we'll see. Stand by. Let Mike get outside. There we go. Anyway, we'll see this dark, shadowy figure spawn in and walk through the room for only a brief moment before disappearing. Freezing time, we can see that it's none other than Rick. His model is very dark, and in the midst of looking at the files, I ended up activating the Rick that we initially make contact with. I was excited to see what would happen if we just played normally at this point. So Mike goes to hide for the final time as he walks by Rick upstairs. Once Sydney is done counting, we can see the Rick fixing the sink will spawn in. So I make my way upstairs, and let's close that for now. Oh yeah, I made the kitty bigger and freed them from the attic. Back on track though, I noticed Mike's nowhere to be found for his final hide, as I would have liked to have seen where he was actually hiding. So from a different perspective, I open the bathroom door to see where he comes from. He comes running up behind us in the most bizarre manner. Slowing it down, we can see his ankles are broken as he makes this valiant sprint to come save us.
He was very committed.
Imagine just 1 minute you're fine, and the next, your feet were put on backwards. At this point, I was really hoping that I could get multiple interactions with Rick at the same time here, but unfortunately, this Rick cannot be interacted with. Pushing on normally, we'll see that Mike and Sydney agree that something's off about Rick, as they attribute it to a lack of social awareness. It's 11:39 p.m. as we're awoken to a knock on the door. It ends up being Mike, as he wants to talk to us about something. Overall, the conversation involves Mike being weird and making strange statements.
Very weird.
These two clearly have a history, as you'll hear in this dialogue, as his whole demeanor gives off creeper vibes. Nora will end up messaging us though, stating that her tire blew out, and she needs assistance. Mike decides he's gonna go help her though, telling Sydney that she should stay here and get some sleep, as she's still in her pajamas. He'll make sure he gets one last hug in, of course, before driving off into the bush. We're left with not much to do at this point, other than go back up to bed, which leads us into the final sequence of the game. Coming back to the beginning of this part, we can see Mikey standing outside our door, appearing like a character we still need to unlock in a fighting game, being completely covered in shadow. The hitchhiker is no longer lingering behind this barn either. Checking out the locked room in the basement reveals that it's no longer an empty room. We can confidently say that someone is living here. Let's get out of the bedroom though, and unlock Mike. There we are. So I let Mike have this awkward conversation with us again, so we can see where he actually ends up when he leaves. Are you going on an adventure, Mr. Baggins? Let's get
Stuart Little
before he makes his leave. Glorious. Off he goes. Of course, his size alters his position in the truck, as we can see him under it. This does not stop him from taking off though, as he goes to save our friend Nora. At one point, I thought he was going to flip the truck, as it began to lean on two wheels. It does eventually end up in this fixed position in the middle of the road though, where both Mike and the truck will remain for the rest of this instance. I, of course, come out to see if I can help my dear friend, but it's looking pretty grim. However, I do pull him out of the truck, and in the end, get him back to the house so he can get warm. He struggled a bit, as he believed he was still driving, so I had him sit down at this table. Sorta. We were already in there, but if you listen in the basement, you can hear snoring in the forbidden room, making it clear that someone's in there. Of course, coming in here with Sydney does nothing, but we can still hear the snoring.
Thing is, it can't be Rick though, because he was outside. He must have somehow gone out of the room again and gone inside again. I don't know.
Take a listen.
It's gonna jump scare. He's gonna jump scare me.
Mike doesn't seem to be concerned with it, so let's go back to bed. It's now 12:39 a.m. and we're waking up to the doorbell. Progressing normally, we'll check to see who's at the door. We'll clearly be able to see that it's our hitchhiker friend, and this can only be bad news. He claims to be in a bad spot, saying he was counting on a ride from some friends, but they're running behind. He ends up getting real upset because we don't let him in. In summary, telling us that karma's well, you know. At this point, we need to get back to bed again, because that apparently seems to be the safe thing to do. After waking up once again, we'll hear a banging sound and then a scream that follows shortly after. This prompts Sydney to text Rick to come back over, as she's scared and believes the hitchhiker is lingering outside. Rick will then show up, with his hammer as well though. We'll explain the situation to him, but the conversation grows dire, as he turns up his creep level, stating the obvious, we're alone. He'll go over to warm up by the fire, as he rambles about storms bringing out all kinds of folks, and that not all of them know when to stay away.
Yeah, like you.
As Real Rick texts us, wondering what we're talking about, as he apparently lives in Burlington and hasn't been to the house in weeks. Imposter Rick will then come up to us, asking who we're talking to.
By the way, I'm not yawning because the video is boring. I'm yawning because I'm fucking tired. But yeah, apparently I watched other people's playthroughs, and I was one of the only ones that actually knew Rick wasn't the Rick that we were renting this from.
Pretty late to be texting. Once we confront him, he gets really upset, saying we're trespassing, and if anyone is leaving, it will only be one of us? At least I think that's what he meant. He'll then dash to the front door and start hammering it shut. I guess you could say him getting us at this point is considered a bad ending. However, what we need to do here is run to the basement and hide. Once doing so, he'll come downstairs as he searches throughout most of the basement. We'll then see him enter the forbidden room, which prompts this chase to begin. We have to make our way upstairs, all the way to the second floor, where we eventually find ourselves hiding in this closet. It's almost like we've been preparing for this. Once he leaves the room, we need to grab the step stool and make our way up into the attic before another text.
It took me 9 jump scares to figure this out.
Message alerts him to our location. We'll hear Mike yelling, "Let us in," as imposter Rick lingers below, eventually leaving out of our sight. Real Rick will then text us, indicating that he's contacted the police, which should be the cue that it's safe to come down. Gentle music will begin to play.
It's so weird. Like, I don't know. The real Rick definitely knew something was up, because normally in that situation you wouldn't just call the police, you'd be like confused. Because the only thing he knows right now is that maybe this person has confused Rick from living. I can't speak. But you know, it seems a bit weak to call the actual authorities for. So he probably knows that something about something. But what do I know?
As we make our way through the house, as our movement is slowed down at this part. When coming down, we can see the back door is open, as Mike busts through the front door with Nora by his side. Of course, Mike was glitched from
Is it Nora in the beginning?
Instance, as his model was frozen for some reason. However, the screen will fade to black as we get an explanation from Sydney on how everything played out. In summary, they get a full refund, but suspect that Real Rick knew imposter Rick. I'd say this tracks, because there's actually a commercial that gives an explanation to this, so take a listen.
With each cabin having a designated caretaker to ensure that your stay is top-notch.
Definitely food for thought. The game then concludes though, as the credits begin to roll. Let's go back to when this hitchhiker wakes us up though. As we're waking up, we'll see that he's at the door knocking away. There's still no sign of anyone in the basement, but once this uncomfortable interaction with the hitchhiker ends, we can see he'll end up walking over to the exterior doors leading into the basement. He'll kick this door until we go back to sleep. But if you check out the bottom left corner of the door here, we can see it says Home Sweet Home, with a drawing of a house next to it. Remember what Imposter Rick said when he first met us? Welcome to my home sweet home. Glorious. Sleeping and waking back up though, we'll see that he's still kicking the door outside, while we're normally hearing the scream outside. The cellar doors will open at this point as the hitchhiker slides away, while doing his kicking motion. He'll disappear shortly after this though. Imposter Rick is nowhere to be found, but does end up loading in right next to the garage, as he takes his sweet time walking around the house and to the front door. We're out to your scheme, old man. So I channeled my inner Sonic the Hedgehog, and as soon as he began to run for the door, I zoomed down the stairs and instead tried to hide in his little home sweet home. This makes for a hilarious scene, as he enters the room and hides from us. We have this odd stare-off, but it doesn't last long, as the text message alerts him, ultimately leading to my demise. Getting outside during this chase is pretty great as well, seeing as he will continue to pursue us. I ran all the way out of Woodbury basically, but he clearly hadn't lost my scent. Man, this bro
He's
is
committed,
slow.
yeah.
Seriously, even at normal speed, we can easily get away from him out here. We can get him caught up on certain buildings, as he's unable to clip through them like we are, but I digress. I made my way back to the house to continue the sequence of events. As soon as we close this door upstairs, during the normal chase, he'll load in right behind it. However, I ended up trying to speed by him to get to our friends this time, and managed to have some dialogue with our friends before getting destroyed. My guess here is that this must be from a scrapped ending, as normally the screen fades to black when reaching these two. My favorite part
that's
about all
interesting.
this is the two of them saying we don't look so good, as Imposter Rick takes us out. Jeez. If we let this full dialogue play out and don't die, we'll see these following lines of text, and then the game will lock up. Because this was cut, again, guessing here, the game never restores movement to the player, so it creates a soft lock. Rewinding time a bit, these two, along with the truck, will load in as we're hiding upstairs. In another instance, I thought if I brought them inside this time, that things would turn out differently. This ends up not being the case, as they just stand there, earning their World's Worst Friends medals. Meanwhile, Imposter Rick continues to chase us. If we play the game the way it's supposed to be played, when Imposter Rick flees, we can see he'll run downstairs and out the back door, vanishing on the back porch. It's okay though. Mike, whose last name is now written as Rizzler in the game files, I kid you not, it's literally written there by the devs.
Is it?
This Mike is here to save the day. The credits will play out as the
Surely
camera
not.
came across the house, as we see the police have
I
shown
literally
up.
made that
Getting a
same
closer look,
joke.
we can't see the one
Bro.
staring down into the basement, who doesn't appear to have a firearm. Did they just send an auxiliary officer to this call? We can see another officer is talking to Mike.
Not
on
in
the porch,
America,
and the other one
surely.
does awkwardly end up joining them. But with that, we've come to the end of our journey in Fears of Fathom Woodbury Getaway, concluding the Fears of Fathom series. I do hope you enjoyed the broken adventures we had throughout these episodes, and I'll catch you all in the next video really soon. Cheers!
That was interesting to say the least. Oh. Yeah. I hope, balls. But yeah, check out Horoscope and the original video in the description. But yeah, bye.